Hello, friends. Welcome to Pod Maverick After Dark. Kirk Henderson, editor-in-chief over at Mavs Moneyball, joined as always by fellow co-manager of Mavs Moneyball, Josh Bowe. How you doing, Josh?
Doing okay. We're alive. I guess that's the first.
Not really. I just kind of got not really. Like my wife and I just got into a quasi argument because I've been toast. Like I have been as close to broken down as I've been in a long time. Sleeping in, sleeping longer, not being as responsive, not being like just going to bed early and then trying to sleep. I've just been a mess. So it's like the whole notion of doing anything Mavs related is usually something I very much look forward to. And I just haven't had the juice. So when I saw like our friends at We Talk Mavs and some of the other podcasts that are out there doing stuff, and I'm just like, good for you. I can't do it.
I mean, the finals ended, a week and a half ago? Like, yeah. I don't know. It's normally the season ends and we get, like last season ended. And it was like, okay, we could take a break because everyone was ready to just hand wash that season away. Like, no one really cared. And it was May, the playoffs were on. So, other teams are in the playoffs. Like, it doesn't matter. Now when the season ends in the finals, like the draft is Thursday? Tomorrow?
It's crazy. And
like,
we don't have a
free agency is next week.
We've talked about nothing. We don't have a single thing up about the draft on Mavs Moneyball. Our executive editor in charge of us named Harrison Fagan, who is just a grinder, has given me a little bit of shit for it, but I'm just like, man, look, our staff rode into the ground for this one. And we're not like, we have fewer staffers, I think, than the Boston Celtics place. And honestly, it's just harder. Like we have staffers like our man Xavier like kind of dropped off the map. I don't blame him. This isn't our real job. So it's like when you run out of gas, it really sucks because you don't really have that like paycheck incentive to get back up and do it.
Yeah, I was about to say we're the double combination of the no paycheck incentive, and most of us are way too old to be blocking. We don't have as much young blood as you usually need to run.
I like it. Like Dalton and I have been talking because Dalton, I think of all people, is also kind of burnt, and Dalton Trigg over at DallasBasketball.com, and I'm like, one of my recurring thoughts has been like, if you weren't doing this, would you want to do it if you took some time off? And I think the answer is almost always yes. It's like, I maybe don't want to do it to the extent that we do it, and I'll work ourselves back up to that. But, you lose in the finals, you start, the sort of, the immediate attempt to rewrite history surrounding the Mavericks and Luka by various douche hats with agendas. That sort of stuff like vexed me. I just needed to take some time away from the internet, but we're back today and we have a fairly we have a lot we could talk about. We really do.
Yeah. I mean, the season ended and it was like, okay, now off season, like it was like all that stuff that kind of kept getting pushed to the side because the Mavericks kept winning. Well, it's like that stuff's still happening, like in the background, like other team seasons are ending, free agencies winding up, draft combine and getting ready for the draft. So like as soon as the season ended, it was like, okay, here's your Mavs rumors. And like, there's no time to waste because there's not a lot of time to write them because all this stuff's going to happen in the next.
No. And my brain has yet to truly accept that.
Yeah. It's crazy. I cannot believe the draft is this week and free agency is in a couple days. I just cannot believe it. But yeah.
The flip side of that, though, is, and when you look at like the calendar of it all, is you go from draft to free agency to summer league to the Olympics. And then unlike last year was last year where they played over in somewhere in Asia. What's wrong with me? The international ball starts to blend together for me.
Abu Dhabi.
Well, that was preseason. The World Cup, like the basketball World Cup, wasn't that? Where was that? Because the games were
right.
Yeah, was that last summer?
Yeah,
I know. So a little bit.
Well,
that's fine. She's our third man booth, 3-man booth.
Oh, you're not allowed to be on the internet.
That's for the best. Hi, Megan. And so it's like I think this year we might be done for the first time since 2021, really, because there's always like something else to go forth and that sort of thing. Oh yeah, get a hug before bed. It's very important. It's the cutest thing in the world. Are you kidding me? Plus, nobody watches these shows this time of the year. That's the other thing to remember. We got it says we have 328 people in here, and I believe we have like 15. So that's sort of the nature of it. So we might be able to get to like real earnest to goodness where we're like struggling to talk about things for the first time in several years, because we really had like an onslaught of content, which is great. But I also don't hate the concept of like a month where nothing happens.
Sorry about that. She thought she wanted to see me, and she was like, "Why are you just shoot me off? I'm gonna cry." Like,
no,
wanted to see me. So sorry about that. Okay,
but don't apologize.
Yeah,
this is great.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, I mean, the first, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. I barely heard what you said.
No, that's okay. I said we're really like this will be the first time in several years once we get into, like once the Olympics are done, where there's not gonna be any basketball content for the first time in a while, because if the World Cup was last year, and like granted, my brain is mashed potatoes, so I could just be misremembering this. If the World Cup was last summer in 2023, not 2022, but again, you're right. There's Abu Dhabi. Like I just
it was in the Philippines, Japan, Indonesia
in 2023 or 2022.
2023.
So so like that happened in August. So we really kind of marched through with continual basketball content going back several years. I mean, we had a little bit of a break because the Mavericks missed the playoffs, but they had their draft pick, and there was a lot of stuff to talk about. And it's that's just sort of the way these things go. And so now we're here, and you always do a really like I should make you do rundowns more often. Like the rundowns you put together for our shows end up being quite good. So let's just kick it off.
Yeah. So the first thing I put here is because I feel like we kind of should touch on it a little bit, even though me and you have been doing this long enough that we know that these aren't worth a lot, but it's all we have, and it's Nico Harrison's exit interview. Surprisingly, I guess this is the new thing that they're going to do now, but no player interviews. It was just Nico. There were no player exit interviews this year, so I'm not sure if that's a new thing going forward, or if that's because of the finals and the schedule's crazy and everyone just kind of wanted to.
I would guess that, because the Mavericks,
they don't have a lot of time for vacation.
That's right. So it's like, just get to it.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. But I just highlighted a few quotes, and of course, this was posted live. I grabbed them from a variety of people. Shout out to Dalton's cohort, Grant Asfeth at DallasBasketball.com. I think I pulled most of these from his story, but I mean, it was everyone. There was a lot of media there, so always appreciative of the people that are actually there, because we cannot be there. His overall sentiment was, we really want everybody to come back 10 to 15% better, mind, body, spirit. I think if we do that, we're going to be proud of the results next year. If you look at our top 7-8 players that played the biggest minutes, I don't see anything happening with that. Pretty much, saying that he thinks that no big moves, but we know GM speak, like, if they can make a big move, I think they're gonna make a big move. Like, Nico's made big trades at almost every opportunity he's had. I mean, outside of the first summer he was here, which he took the job like a couple days before free agency started. Yep. Like that trade deadline, he traded Kristaps Porzingis. The following summer, he traded for Christian Wood, and then the next trade deadline, he traded for Kyrie Irving, and then traded for Grant Williams, and then PJ Washington. Like, this guy makes moves. Like, this guy is not afraid to make moves. So the idea that this is going to be a quiet summer might happen just because of the restraints that they have in terms of their trade ammo and roster building ammo. But I absolutely believe that they probably have bigger aspirations than just running it back. I would think.
Yeah, and we're going to kind of see, though. And, you know,
maybe I'm wrong.
And, you know, this kind of blends with our whole conversation. But my sort of theme, and I think, and it is not just because I am brain dead, but I think that when you make the finals, the team building apparatus deserves a whole lot of grace and a whole lot of faith. I'm not normally that guy. I'm normally very critical. I spent the entirety of the 2016 free agency period freaking out about Harrison Barnes. I normally want to drag this team through the mud, but I'm just sort of open to whatever they think works. You know, we'll probably talk a little bit about the various playoff rumors, but I think not playoff, free agency rumors. But I think sort of where I land is that I'm very confident in the Mavericks top 6. So you go Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Dereck Lively, Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington, and you have to assume they do something because they keep emphasizing Derrick Jones Jr. being a priority, bringing Derrick Jones Jr. back for something reasonable once they figure out other elements of their roster. So when I look at that top 6, I'm pretty excited about that. And I haven't been excited about the top end of the rotation for a decade more. I mean, there's always been like super questionable holes where I'm like, what are you doing? And you could probably make the argument of, all right, Derrick Jones Jr. is the weak spot and they got to upgrade that. But okay, again, they made the finals. So I'm sitting here like, how can I be an asshole about this? There's no real way for me to do this unless I'm just, unless I have the fan disease of more, where I don't want to be happy with anything the Mavericks do. Like when I yelled at our fans during the final group where, I had one guy message me and he's just like, I find this sort of, speaking down to fans really frustrating. And I said, I get it, but I also find it frustrating whenever people can't take joy in elements of basketball. But so it's like when we talk about these things, I'm very ambivalent. I'm kind of like, there's rumors that happened today where I'm kind of like, okay, like I'm not, and that's just such a weird position for me to be in because I'm just such an antagonist.
I know. And it's also tough for like the fan base because you look at what Boston did, who just won the title. Like they went to the finals in 2022 and they went to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2023. And then last summer, they made 2 huge trades that upended their roster. They traded for Kristaps Porzingis and then they traded for Drew Holiday. Like that's a team that presumably had a pretty good top 5, top 6. And they were like, all right, we're gonna make some moves. So, there's definitely room to let this roster grow for sure, because I mean they really haven't played together that long. What did Jordan, our staffer Jordan, said in Slack earlier? He was like, PJ Washington's played almost as many playoff games with the Mavericks as regular season games. Like I think he played 29 regular season games and 22 playoff games.
That's crazy.
Yeah. That's wild. So
that's a great stat pull.
That is, when he pulled that was great. So it does show like they do have some room to just internally get better, and that was kind of the theme of the Nico exit interview, because he's not going to go out there and be like, yeah, we're trading for LeBron. Like, I don't know why fans think that that's like what these guys are going to say. Like,
you talked about Washington and I talked about Derrick Jones Jr. Let's do Derrick Jones Jr. first. So Harrison said of re-signing Derrick Jones Jr., I don't know how we're going to do it, but he's priority 1A and 1B. I think he fits with our whole team. He loves it here. We have to figure out the dynamics to get him to stay. But yeah, that's a priority. We'll do what we have to get it done. Now, I don't want to make my computer rattle because it's sitting up on a stand. But if you were to type in like Derrick Jones Jr. career salary, I'm pretty sure he's made less than $30 million for a 7-year, 8-year career, which less than, like, that's more money than you and I will ever make in our lifetimes. But for an NBA player, he's actually had, because he was undrafted, he's actually had kind of an interesting career. And so this is the time that he can make money. So fitting in this will likely, just given the way basketball players' bodies work, this might be the last time he has to make money. So it's in a significant way. It's very interesting because he talked during the finals about wanting to resign here. Like, there's no question in my mind that he wants to be a Maverick. I'm just sort of taking a little bit of I don't think this is a done deal kind of thing, because it's too difficult to a guy, if he, what was the asinine contract that ESPN is like, is somebody on ESPN, maybe it was The Athletic.
Bobby Marks said like $22 million a year or something.
Basically, what was the contract from the guy from Denver that signed with who was it?
Grant?
No.
Grant or Kentavious Caldwell-Pope?
No, Brown. No, who am I thinking?
Bruce Brown.
Bruce Brown.
Like 2 for $45.
Right.
Like
it's
that,
kind of like a Bruce
44.
Brown type deal. And it's like, well, it is could somebody do it? Because if the salary cap's set to go rise and rise and rise again, I sort of think somebody would do that. And so I don't know.
There's plenty of teams that need to spend money too. Like
right. Well, that's the other part. And so we're just in kind of this interesting position. And Scott, CBA Mavs will probably talk about this at me at some point, but he's overseas at the moment. I don't want to exhaust him.
Yeah.
Mavericks are $5 million under the first apron. I don't know enough about the mechanics of this stuff, but the first and second aprons are specifically put in place to prevent, like, they penalize teams for operating over those salary cap levels and minimize their flexibility. So if the Mavericks are going to resign DJJ, they need to get out from under some salary to get into the point to where they can have their full mid-level exception. So,
and we will get to how they will potentially be doing that a little bit.
The chat is all aflutter, and I think we have to address this just because it's out there. Where are we? There's Adrian Wojnarowski bomb.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just pull it up here. Sorry. The Knicks are sending 4 unprotected firsts, 25, 27, 29, and a 31, and a 2025 pick, Milwaukee first, and a 2028 unprotected pick swap, and a 2025 second-round pick for Mikal Bridges and a second-round pick. So the New York Villanova are what they're running out there. Really fascinating. I don't really have much more to say other than Mikal Bridges was the guy who I wanted the Mavericks to take at 5 back in 2018. Oh. I've always loved him as a player. But that's a lot. They're all in on the Villanova team.
They are. I mean, that's basically, they're the on paper team is pretty sweet, but we'll see if they can be healthy.
Well, then who else do they have to re-sign?
OG Anunoby.
And OG,
I have to imagine you're re-signing OG if you like. Well, why are you're all in? Why would you not?
Right. No, you kind of got to. But OG is a guy that doesn't play enough games. This is this is something
on paper. Jalen Brunson, DiVincenzo, OG, Mikal Bridges.
Well, shout out to the Nets, because the Nets needed to recoup some stuff because they sent a ton of picks to the Rockets to where they couldn't be bad. They couldn't tank because their picks automatically went to the Rockets for the Harden thing. So that's an interesting point. All right, back to the Mavericks. We're not another team podcast thing.
And the Mavericks were trading for Mikal Bridges. I know some fans.
And that's okay. So but Dalton, everybody, pipe dream out of your mind. All right. So I really like that quote from him. It's we'll be interested to see with what they do with Derrick Jones Jr. I hope they hold on to him is where I'm staying, but I understand that the mechanics of holding on to Derrick Jones Jr. is really difficult because, like I said, even though I'm very into the top 6, if there is one position that held them back in the finals, it was Derrick Jones Jr.'s. He just didn't have a place in that series, and that became more obvious as it went on because they were happy with him trying to shoot, and he really wasn't. He had been a pretty amazing defender the entire playoff run. And he didn't. Did he stand out to you defensively against the Celtics?
No, that was a tough series for him for sure. For sure. But again, that was probably
a tough series for everybody.
Right. Celtics pretty good. Breaking news. We've been
Celtics good
for like a
month. Good.
Yeah. But they should bring him back. He fits for what they want to do. Obviously, if it gets to a Bruce Brown level kind of deal, he needs to take that. And if the Mavericks can't offer that because of their financial restrictions, that's not no fault of the Mavericks. And then you can't fault him because this is, like you said, he's 27. I think he'll turn 28 this season. This will be his last chance to get a big multi-year contract, I think.
Yep. So. All right. So why don't you go with the PJ quote?
Yeah, so I thought this was interesting on PJ Washington, PJ specifically, and this is Nico Harrison again during his exit interview. This is what he's saying. I think he can add a few more points a game, taking the ball off the rim, pushing it, posting up smaller players, shooting a little higher percentage from the 3-point line, penetrating when they run him off the line, Harrison said. So he can add a few more points, and he's going to. He's poised to continue to get better. I thought that was kind of interesting because I think that's kind of been something we've been talking about since he's been traded here, because his offense has been so inconsistent, to say the least. Is that he seemingly is a talented offensive player, and I think when he was traded here, that was kind of part of the deal. Was why doesn't his production match the talent? Because you watch him, and he is ultra athletic. He's fast. His jumper, to me, form wise, looks good. And you're wondering why doesn't he consistently hit that jumper after he came out of college? Good year at Kentucky shooting threes. First 2 years in the NBA was above average shooting threes, and then it's just he's kind of taking a step back like the last 2 years. And you're just like, what's going on? Because mechanics doesn't look like something's wrong with him mechanics wise necessarily. At least from our vantage point, we don't know, up close. So it makes sense that if they can't make a big move to bring in some more offense and some more shooting into their starting lineup,
right?
Like PJ makes the most sense for if they need to get better internally. And obviously in the finals, their biggest issue was that they just could not score enough because they had just maybe.
I mean, PJ was garbage. Like PJ was bad. Like Bill Simmons had this pretty good, Bill Simmons of all people had a pretty amazing tweet that listed out how bad the various Mavericks were in Boston. And PJ was the one who probably had the most opportunity and then derped the most. That said, we saw a lot from PJ this year. I am Brian Damaris said on the Take That With You podcast that as he understands it being, don't really understand his role. Like he is a former Mavericks employee for a regime that is no longer there. But he still obviously has multiple friends within inside the organization. As he understands it, they're going to work on rebuilding his shot, which the first thing I thought of was like, does that mean he's getting LASIK? Because I just don't understand the man's depth perception. But still, they see there's there. I mean, if they could rebuild, like Dorian Finney-Smith could not shoot. I just can't emphasize how bad Dorian Finney-Smith was. And then all of a sudden he's shooting 38% from three. So I don't.
And he's got the skill. Like it's not like they are starting from scratch. Like he can do some stuff in the post. He showed off that floater. He showed off some post ups in the playoffs when Gilgeous-Alexander Thunder tried to hide him, hide Shea on PJ, and he posted him up and scored on him a couple times. Like you're not working from scratch. Like this is not some defense. Like this is not Derrick Jones Jr. No offense to Derrick Jones Jr., but he has some tools in the toolbox, so to speak. He can shoot better than what he showed in Dallas. I truly believe that he could do a little bit more from 2-point range. The big thing that they're going to have to figure out is one way to probably get him some better looks is to run some more pick and roll with him as the role.
But he's got to improve his ball handling.
You got to improve ball handling, got to improve his spot up threes, but also if they are pretty committed to Lively and Gafford, it does make it harder to run pick and rolls with your 4 when your 5-man is in the dunker spot because he can't roll. Like he pretty much has to pick and pop exclusively. And when the defense knows what you're going to be doing every single time, makes it way easier to guard. So if they want to mix things up with him, they're going to have to figure out how he can be worked in the pick and roll, even with a rim runner, dunker spot player like Lively or Gafford on the floor. Well, they're gonna have to figure that part out.
Which is something, and that's an interesting and a good. I don't want to say a good problem, but a problem that I'm interested in them solving.
And he's 25. So.
Yes, yeah, a lot of basketball to be played for that man. The last quote was on Dereck Lively that you found interesting. D-Live, he improved right before our eyes from the first part of the season all the way to the playoffs. He continued to improve. I think the sky's the limit. We got a good one in him. All defensive player, all-star type guy. Who knows what his timeline will happen, when his timeline will happen. But he's well on his way to being a special player. And that's, for us that watch the team very closely, that's the revelation. That's the takeaway where again, not to just from a national perspective, when I heard after the game, it was like it was on one of Bill Simmons' shows with Rob Mahoney. I'm surprised Rob didn't have more to say about this, but they basically called him a Tyson Chandler who can pass. And I'm just going to stick with my 7'1" Draymond comp. I really am. Like the kind of stuff he can do, offense and defense. I don't want to put a ceiling on him. He is he's not Victor Wembanyama. Okay, so what? He's the second best player in the draft class right now. He is. I wouldn't take. There's not a single player I would take above Dereck Lively with what the Mavericks need, other than Victor Wembanyama. And Matthew Phillips of Mavs Moneyball contributor, who threatened to quit the site like 19 times during the playoffs because he was so frustrated by certain elements of the refereeing. He had a good point. He's writing something on Maxi Kleber, and we were talking about 3-point shooting volume. And I think one of the silly goals for next season, he needs to shoot a 3 a game. 1 3 a game. He needs to be willing to take the shot. And I think if he is hitting 33% of his threes, it's going to change the way teams guard the Mavericks. Like they're this close. Celtics are kind of an outlier team because they can guard 5 out. Nobody else can. Like if this dude's shooting pick and pop threes, oh my God,
it's over.
Like, what do you do? Like, what do you do?
You're really big on this. Do you feel like they could push that? I mean, I don't know what the Mavericks. I don't think the Mavericks have said publicly if they want him to be a big 3-point shooter. I think even Kidd kind of pushed. I think I remember.
But if you are going to run 5 out offense, you have to have 5 threats. You cannot have like Maxi Kleber is not a stretch 5 or a stretch 4.
But
or
do they need
anything?
Do they need Lively to be a stretch 5 for them to be the best team that they can be with him on the roster? Yes, he's already pretty good right now.
Because I don't see how they're going to improve their shooting. So one of the interesting parts about this season was, and Rob Mahoney wrote about this right before the trade deadline. The Mavericks have tried to pair Luka with shooting for years. They made it to the Western Conference Finals with pretty good shooting. Shooting is a premium skill that is expensive. So they went the other direction at the trade deadline and went with pure athleticism. They lost some of their shooting. Tim Hardaway was the most important shooter on the roster, and he didn't play in the playoffs and ultimately didn't matter. So if they're going to continue to stress athleticism and defensive versatility, and I think they will, they're going to inevitably give up some amount of skill elsewhere. And I think that comes at the 3-point line. So if you have, instead of just Kyrie and Luka as willing 3-point shooters, and then PJ is somebody who's okay, Derrick Jones Jr. is somebody who's, mid at best, but you're hopeful. If you can get that 1 3-pointer a game from Dereck Lively, whether it's from the corner or the top of the key, it just changes how teams guard. Like Luka likes to be doubled, and I'm getting off on all sorts of sideways tangents here, but Dereck Lively is the outlet man on any of those catches. Ability to shoot that 3, drive to the rack, dunk, drive and pass is simply unfucking stoppable. Draymond Green and Steph Curry did this. We saw it. They rode it to multiple championships. And I mean, Lively's just that kind of guy on both ends of the floor. I'm really high on him. Maybe I'm just totally high on my supply, but that's how I feel right now.
We saw a 20-year-old rookie go against a team with Rudy Gobert in a conference finals and outplay him. Like, I don't think it's going to take some time to settle in. It's probably going to be years down the road, like when his career is over. That's how long it's going to take for us, I think, to truly understand how special his rookie season is, because you just do not see 20-year-old.
No, he's up there with Magic Johnson and like some of the greatest players to ever play the game. And you're just like, what is going on here?
Yeah. And I'm not trying to say production. Obviously, he's not setting records with his production, but I'm just talking about playing winning basketball as a 20-year-old big man. And, he wasn't just along for the ride. He was he was their plus minus leader for almost all of the playoffs. Like, he was a big reason why they got to the finals. Like, it wasn't like the Mavericks kind of took him along for the ride and he just came off the bench and played a couple minutes and got a couple cool dunks. Like, he was their defensive anchor in the playoffs, especially since Gafford struggled a little bit in the first 3 rounds. Like, it was pretty remarkable. And I don't know if we're going to see something like that for a while. It's going to take another special, Luka level, like, another special talent. But he just kept doing things this season that was like, okay, I didn't think he could do that. And then like another month would go by. I was like, oh, I didn't think he could do that either. Like, remember we were talking, like, he couldn't set screens in the preseason. And then by the end of like the first month, like him and Luka are doing great in the pick and roll. And then it was like, okay, he probably is going to struggle a little bit when they double Luka and he catches on that short roll and making decisions. And then he had that game against the Oklahoma City Thunder where he caught the ball and like took hard dribbles at Chet Holmgren and dunked and finished at the rim. And we're like, wait, what? Like he was doing stuff in the NBA he didn't even do at Duke or like in high school. Like, so you're right. I think the sky is the limit. And even if I am a little skeptical about how fast he could be a stretch five, I mean, good Lord, he did stuff faster this past rookie season that I thought would take him 2 years to be good.
Right.
So who knows?
So we're half hour into this. We're going to take a quick break here, and then I want to read another tweet from Adrian Wojnarowski, and we'll talk a little bit more, and then we'll get out of Dodge here. So everybody, thank you so much for hanging out here live with Josh and I. There's not too many people in here. I don't really expect that kind of thing for the off season. We'll try to post our live schedule in advance. We'll probably do nights like this. I'll occasionally do secondary shows where we'll do the fan participation thing. Really like talking with you guys. I'll try to post that availability in advance too, so we can be aware and have people come up and join the show. I probably won't be able to do what I did last summer, which was essentially do this like during the middle of a work day. I just have a different work situation now. It's a little more difficult for us to do, but Josh and I will be coming to you guys at least once a week. We're probably I think we're contractually obligated for twice a week, but I don't know if that counts considering we did like a bajillion podcasts during the year. We'll see what happens there. Please consider liking and subscribing. We'll be here for all the fun stuff. I'm going to Summer League, and I'll probably cover a little bit of the games there. Don't know if I'm getting credentialed yet, but we'll figure that out. Those of you who are listening on an audio stream, thank you for your support. Please hang out here for a couple of ads, and then Josh and I will be right back. Okay, so there's another deal, which I don't... Like, this is where the NBA gets into like spreadsheet chicanery that I just I don't understand why people find this stuff fun. Another massive deal for Brooklyn. Brooklyn has a deal done with Houston to return the Nets 2026 first round pick for a 2027 Suns first round pick. Sources tell ESPN. Rockets also acquire 2025 right to swap Houston OKC first for the 2025 Suns first round pick. More in the deal, Houston acquires a 2029 more favorable of Dallas and Phoenix first-round pick and acquires right to swap Houston first-round pick for less favorable Dallas first and Dallas and Phoenix first per sources. That's where I get sort of like, huh? Like what? I don't know. Am I missing?
Oh well, now here's how to explain all that. Implication of the Rockets landing the Suns picks. Wojnarowski just tweeted this. Houston wants to trade for Kevin Durant, and that becomes far easier if they can return the Suns picks that they gave up in the Durant deal to the Nets. Suns have said they're keeping Durant for now, but that could change next season. But now Houston has the picks to make the Suns whole again. The NBA never. You
don't make anybody whole again when you trade somebody at Kevin Durant's stature. Like that would imply that Phoenix is blowing up whatever they have and moving on.
Yeah, I don't think this trade was all picks, the Rockets and Nets, right? Like, I don't think you do that unless the other domino is about to drop, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's... I did think Kevin Durant... I mean, I anticipated Kevin Durant getting traded. I thought the Suns were going to lose in the play-in and then even get traded, but getting swept in the first round... that's close enough, right?
Well, and Houston had a set goal last season of making the playoffs, and they didn't.
Oh yeah, they don't want to be bad anymore. And Udoka does.
Well, and they're good. I mean, they're quite good.
Like,
they're quite an interesting team, but they don't have that 1A guy yet.
Right.
And so, but they just have so many interesting pieces, and you just need something to connect everything home.
Right.
The Nets traded KD for 9 unprotected firsts, Cam Johnson, and 2 swaps. Not a bad assessment of things. Thank you, B, for that tweet. I like that. Anyway, again, not a podcast for national stuff, but it is interesting as far as how it affects the Mavs. I mean, I don't worry about this stuff at the moment, but the Mavericks don't control anything of theirs from 2028 to 2031. No, So they pick swap
They've
out
got a couple more picks to trade, right? Like 1 or 2 more picks they can trade.
Pick swap out for 2028 is done. Pick swap out for 2030 is done with the Spurs. Then they owe the 2029 pick to the Nets, and I guess that one is one of the ones that could move to the other teams. They are off their 2024 pick now, so I cannot remember if they owe that 2027 to anyone.
2027, I think, is to Charlotte for PJ, I think.
Okay, so it's they don't owe the 2031 to anyone, and they could still theoretically move the 2025 pick, which is not very valuable. I don't think they can move the 2026 pick because you can't trade back to back. Yeah, B says the Mavs can trade 2025 and 2031 picks if they want to. So nice, and I earnestly think they will at some point. But now we're kind of in the trade rumors and talk and free agency and draft and yada yada yada. And so where we're at, and I'm curious where you are with this. There's a lot of stuff out there, but as a big picture sense, if I'm Nico Harrison, I don't move unless I am very happy with the deal. Some of the things that are out there right now don't make a ton of sense to me. Like I have a friend in Portland, and he's Danny Meringue is his name, and he's tuned in to the Portland organization. He's on the radio up there. I don't know if this is off the record or not. I don't think it necessarily matters. The Mavericks have inquired about what's his name?
Grant?
Yeah. And the Blazers are like, why are you calling? Because again, it's like the same Mavericks fans that were trying to offer Tim Hardaway Jr. for Mikal Bridges. Obviously, Mikal Bridges and Jeremy Grant are not the same player, but Jeremy Grant is an expensive, good basketball player. You've got to give something to get. And like right now, we're in this position where, assuming you really like some of these Mavericks players, you've got to understand that a lot of these guys that the Mavericks have available to trade are not awful, but they're not interesting. Like 6'4" shooting guards. So Josh Green, Jaden Hardy. There's 20 of those in every draft. There just are. So I don't like what Maxi Kleba is burnt toast, and you got to find a team that's happy with a guy who won't shoot threes and can only play 15 minutes a game. Tim Hardaway is the only interesting one, and I know we'll talk about him more in a minute, but it's for me right now, I'm not seeing it. So it's like is your 2025 pick a real sweetener for any team that's probably going to be, picks 22 to 31 in a draft? Is that interesting to anyone?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. So what should we talk about next?
Okay, well, do we want to bounce off that with some other offseason rumors, the ones before all this other stuff started bouncing off? You want to
yeah.
So Mark Stein has kind of had a pair of Mavericks reports. First one came earlier in the I think this came last week. He said the Mavericks are interested in drafting Bronny James with the 58th pick in the 2024 draft. So that's the Mavericks' only pick in this week's draft. It's the, I think, last pick of the draft, but 58, I thought there were 60 picks, but maybe there's something.
No, there's not, because people have lost picks to basically punishment by the NBA.
Okay, so it's the last pick of the 2024 draft. So they said they're interested in Bronny. By all reports, that's somewhere around the range that Bronny is expected to be drafted, anywhere from maybe would be wild if he was taken in the late first, but everyone's been pretty much saying he's probably going to be a second rounder. He's only worked out for the Lakers and the Suns. His agent is Rich Paul, who's also LeBron's agent.
He's very clearly said he's not going to any team that wants to put him on a two-way deal, send him to the G League, which is fascinating.
Right. So, but also Rich Paul talked to ESPN, and Rich Paul said he confirmed the Mavericks' interest in Bronny, and also said, quote, Nico Harrison is like an uncle to Bronny. Which makes sense because Nico worked at Nike for a long time, while LeBron has been a Nike guy for his whole life. So Nico has known LeBron since he's at least 17, 18.
Right.
So he's probably, I guess he's known Bronny's entire life.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. So this is my, not so subtle way of saying LeBron's coming to Dallas. Book it. championship 2025 with LeBron, Luka, Kyrie getting the new big three back together, and nothing else to talk about, right?
It's going to be weird. I mean, you get past, so we'll circle back to the LeBron thing because I just think it's funny to talk about.
I know.
You get past about pick 45 and agents start hoping that their guys aren't picked.
Because then they can choose where to
then
go.
they can choose where they can go as an undrafted free agent. Guys that get picked until about 30 to 40 are still stand a pretty good chance of making a lot of rosters because you're actually normally playing for bad teams. So I don't really have a lot of thoughts. I mean, whatever they do with the 58th pick is going to be fine with me. I always look forward to whatever. So I like the draft traditionally, just always have, because I think it's the best way you build. But the Mavericks built last year. They don't have a pick right now. Went to New York. 58 is fine. Maybe you never know what could happen, but I don't really have a lot of interest in it. The LeBron of it all would be funny. Like he from a basketball standpoint, LeBron James as the second, third heat would be amazing.
It and just for would. Us professionally would be
everybody would be great, but it's not happening. Like he's going to stay a Laker. That their joke of a coaching search resulting in getting JJ Redick, where Redick talked about how they never once discussed it. Like this is something that's been in the works. So I don't see any way he leaves.
No, I know, but it is funny that he keeps bringing up Kyrie and wanting like how much he loved playing with Kyrie, how much he wished he could play with Kyrie again, and it's just kind of funny to me because LeBron is very deliberate with what he says in the media, and I don't feel like I don't know. This is conspiracy tinfoil hat Josh talking right now. There's like a 5% of my brain that's like, he's doing this on purpose because he keeps. It's not like he did a one-off interview, and I know he did that sit-down interview. I think it was the deadline that the Mavericks traded for Kyrie, where he basically told ESPN he wants the Lakers to trade for Kyrie. And it'd be one thing if he was kind of like over it there, but like he literally just talked about him again, like I think a month ago, and he tweets about him. Like I don't know. There's a part of me that feels like there's something there, and with Nico. And he loves Jason Kidd. He talks about Jason Kidd a lot too.
That's true.
Kidd with his time in the Lakers. He likes Luka, by the way. I think every time they've done the All-Star,
he's been hilariously thirsty.
Yeah, because I mean, Luka is like him, kind of in a way. Like in a lot of ways, they're offensive games in some way, like their passing ability and their size. But also like LeBron, every time they've done the All-Star, like pick your teams, LeBron has picked Luka every single time. Because LeBron's been a captain, I think, every single year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And also what's kind of funny about it is from, I'm not a draft guy. So I'm relaying information from people that we talk to, our friends, what I'm reading. So this is not my take. This is other people's takes. Is everyone I've seen, I think, our guy, Ricky O'Donnell for SB Nation, I think he wrote about Bronny and was like, okay, so what would be good for him? Because his year USC was such a mess. Like because of his heart injury, and that season was so heart condition.
Yeah,
and that season, that team was just such a mess, and the program was a mess. Like, what does he look like in the NBA? And he was kind of like he'd be good on like a good team where he doesn't have to do the bulk of like if he could slide in as a role player to just knock down shots, not be the best defender, but not have to be the weak link. Like just go in and kind of be a connecting piece off the bench on a team that's already established. Like, I think he said that would be the best environment for him.
He had pretty good testing.
The Mavericks, right? Like, isn't that kind of what they need coming off the bench? Like, someone that can just hold their own defensively and maybe knock down a couple shots. Mm-hmm. So it almost feels like Bronny would be a good basketball fit outside of the hoopla of we're drafting you to bring in your father.
Right. I mean, his athletic testing was significantly better than people thought it would be because he's not particularly tall.
No,
he's like 6'4" at best. He's big, broad shoulders, that sort of thing. But this probably isn't fair. But it's like Lou Dort went to out of college, was like basically the kind of guy who was like a football player playing basketball. Bronny wouldn't be quite like that, but he's like people didn't have significantly high expectations for him, for Dort, and so I don't have high expectations for the kid. I hope whatever the Mavericks do with that pick is interesting. And it gives us something else to talk about. But again, I'm just so kind of content.
He's not leaving LA.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of content with where things are, and that's not the way I ought to be, but whatever. All right, well, let's get to the last piece of actually, there's two more pieces of news. You wrote about one, but I want to talk about the other first. So the Detroit Pistons snatched up Dennis Lindsey from the Dallas Mavericks today.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's, Lindsey, as far as I understood things, did not have a specific title with the Mavericks. He was kind of like senior advisor. And I think he provided some stability to Nico. I don't know how much of a loss it is for the Mavericks outside of the fact that I am now actually quite concerned that the Pistons are going to make a run at Sean Sweeney for head coach. And Sweeney's pretty important if you listen to people who talk to the team. According to Tim McMahon, Luka Doncic asked Sean Sweeney to go help the Slovenian national team's defense heading into the Olympics.
Yeah, he's like their defensive coordinator.
And okay, if you say, all right, they built a foundation, this is where they go from here. Coordinator positions matter. They just do. I mean, I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, and their defensive coordinator is why they've won 2 Super Bowls in a row, not because of Patrick Mahomes, even though people will kill me for that.
That might be the wildest thing you've ever said on this podcast.
I mean, they won because of defense. They did.
They're also the best quarterback in the world.
Chris Jones getting in Brock Purdy's face when there's a touchdown on the line really helped. Anyway, I'm just sort of thinking about that. That's going to be on my mind because I think that kid is a basketball savant and a manager of people. And we saw his master plan unfold this year where he's not going to press buttons because he knows he only has so many buttons he can press. But at the same time, you still got to win basketball games. And regular season guy, like to hear McMahon described him as like mini Tom Thibodeau back when Thibodeau was with Doc Rivers and the Celtics, just constantly barking and pushing people. I think that's like the Mavericks need that guy. Like the Mavericks play lackadaisically as shit sometimes. They need an asshole around. And Kid is not that kind of guy. So anyway, it's just something I'm sort of thinking about as Cowboy asked, thank you for the tip, Cowboy, asked, could Daryl Armstrong move up if Sweeney leaves? Front of the bench stuff from Daryl Armstrong would be wild. I had one guy in one of my group chats ask who Daryl Armstrong was. And I'm like, Daryl Armstrong is like he's one of those guys you knew if you watched the NBA hardcore in the early 2000s. Anyways, Josh McSwain asks, did we talk about Dennis Lindsey going to Detroit? Yes, I just finished up with that. So thank you so much for that. Oh man, my man Joe murdering me with the Tommy Boy hair. Yeah, that's like kid just got out of baseball practice with my kid. It's 108 degrees outside, whatever the shit it is.
Yeah, to put a bow on the Lindsey and Sweeney kind of tag team there this is kind of what happens when you have a great season. By the way,
yeah,
you get pillaged because people are like, rightly so. They want to advance their, they want to get a better job. Dennis Lindsey was a GM. He ran a team. I don't think he wanted to be, part advisor or, executive or, he wanted to get back to running his own team. So that part, when you have a great season, other teams are going to notice and they're going to be like, hey, we want those guys that helped you have a great season. Like you get pillaged at almost every finals team, championship team, conference finals team. You see assistants on both the coaching staff and the front office. They start getting poached. That's
right.
Order of things. Like I don't know if you should. It's a bummer, but I wouldn't say it's one of those things where it's like don't like shake your fist at the Mavericks. Like they're not cheapening out. Like guys want to go take the next step of their careers, and there's that's kind of.
I think that's Yeah, no, I think you're right on that one. Man, now I'm looking for something in my own Twitter profile, which is bad. It's not the best way to. But
so what do you want to talk about next?
Well, no, you start talking next, and Coach or Cowboy had a Popeye Jones related tweet, and Popeye Jones is one of my weird Mavericks sweet spots. So why don't you finish off with the final rumor, and we'll circle back to this.
Okay, the last rumor was Mark Stein reported today, Tuesday, that the Mavericks and Pistons are interested in a trade for Tim Hardaway Jr. That was the initial post he posted on Twitter. And then he followed that up saying the deal could potentially involve Quentin Grimes, who was traded to Detroit last trade deadline when the Knicks went for Bojan Bogdanovic. Grimes, third-year player drafted in 2021. Pretty traditional 3-and-D guard. Had pretty promising rookie and sophomore seasons in New York as like looking like a bona fide rotation player, and then got traded to Detroit and was hurt and fell off a cliff, so to speak. He played 6 games after getting traded to Detroit. Shot 4 of 28 from 3 in those 6 games. That is 14%.
That's Luka Doncic in the last 3 games of the NBA Finals.
Yeah, not good, but he is a 6'5", 24-year-old guard. Former first-round pick. Would actually be a pretty nice little move for the Mavericks, because presumably, like, I've seen some people in the chat being like, well, how is that the deal? You know, how they got to match salaries, and the Pistons project to have like 60 to 65 million in cap space this summer.
So they don't need space anymore either.
Yeah, that's so they can just trade Tim into the cap space, and Grimes would just be like a throw-in, presumably, and the Mavericks would probably kick in maybe some like future seconds, maybe the 58th pick. I don't know.
It would be very, very funny if they traded for him and then Sean Sweeney had to go coach Tim Hardaway.
I know, that would be pretty funny. But a lot of people were like, why would Detroit just take Tim? But one, Tim's an expiring deal, so it's not really killing Detroit. And 2, it's Detroit. They're one of the worst teams in the league, and they have cap space, and no one signs in Detroit. So it's not like Tim would be taking up a huge part of their cap room and getting in the way of something else. Like, they have to kind of spend money. They have to reach the salary floor. So like taking on Tim's expiring contract would do literally nothing to their books, like, or their future planning. Like, it would really not mess up anything. And they could flip him at the deadline to another, if another team needs to offload salary and another move later. So it wouldn't really be that big of a deal. And then you pick up Grimes again. It's all rumors. It's not official yet. Mark Stein so far is the main one reporting on it, and we'll see if this picks up traction as we get closer to the draft. But can
I address something about Grimes that made me laugh here? So our man Salam, who's a regular commenter, says Green and Grimes equals the Spider-Man pointing meme. I want to make something very clear here. I saw a 4-minute clip today of Grimes navigating screens. Okay. I could show you a 4-minute clip of Josh Green dying on screens, navigating them, never happening. Anyway, I just wanted to make that joke because
no,
I do think like the Grimes element of this is so fascinating, because Grimes he's at the point where you got to make a decision on him, and so that's where the trade, if he was involved in it somehow and came to the Mavericks,
he'll be a restricted free agent next summer.
Interesting. I don't necessarily think it's good. Like Daniel in the chat says, I really don't want Grimes, and I get it. I'm not married to any of this stuff, but it's just, if you're trading something for a chance, you want to see a guy in a different situation. I don't know. I mean, it's just, again, I keep circling back to my initial point of I like the Mavericks top 6, and so you have to, at a certain point, you're not getting guaranteed production, because nobody can be like the Celtics and just trick everyone into trading good players for bad players, which is what the Celtics did. Like, you got to have dart throws pan out. And, again, Dante Exum is coming back next year. Like, they have him for another, I can promise that. And he's on like the bare minimum deal. I have a strong feeling he's going to be part of the Mavericks rotation regularly. So I don't know. I'm feeling bullish enough about the Mavericks where I'm not super worried about anything they choose to do. I don't know. Maybe that's a cop out.
Well, I don't see what's not trying to pump up Grimes is like going to be an all-star or something, but I don't really see the downside. Like, I don't know how you could get mad at a move like this, because Tim is not part of your plans. Clearly, he did not play much in the playoffs, and he got phased out. He doesn't really fit the new identity, although they still did need his shooting, which is why they kept trying to give him chances, because they just flipped the switch so much from shooting to athleticism that they still needed some shooting, and they kept trying him and it didn't work out. He's not part of your future. He's a little bit, I think he's already 30 or about to turn 30. I think he may be 31. So you flip him for basically like a younger player at his size and position that could potentially add maybe some more defensive oomph to your rotation and to your bench rotation. Because when he was before he got traded to Detroit, when he was healthy, like his second year in the league, he was a pretty bona fide defender and shooter. I mean, this is a guy who's only averaged he's averaging for his career 23 minutes a game, still averages 5 3-point attempts per game. He gets up shots. Like, I'm kind of shocked at this. Like, his per 36 3-point attempts per game for his career is 7.7. Like, this is a guy who will shoot. And before he got hurt and before last season and before the trade to Detroit, he looked pretty promising as a defender. Again, not going to be a starter, probably not going to be a guy who closes games for you in the playoffs, but just gives you an extra option, and he's 25. So, like, I'm not entirely sure if he doesn't work, he's getting paid $4.2 million, I think, this season, and then you let him walk. Like, I don't really see what the harm is in bringing in a guy like this and letting him try it out. Think of it like the Derrick Jones Jr. signing. Like, you throw a dart on someone that can fit what you want to do and is young, and you go from there.
I do. It is pretty fascinating that they're moving on. Not like fascinating. It's kind of obvious, but it's like the Tim Hardaway stuff has been so out in the open. Like, his dad is such a fucking moron. I'm sorry. Like, quit negotiating in the public and commenting on Instagram. Why? Like, he's such a boomer on Facebook, being like, people talking about my son. We were unhappy with our situation. I was unhappy with Tim's inability to stay with his man. Okay? I was unhappy with the fact that from 2021, when he started clanging shots in game 3 against the Clippers, until, God, it might have been 60 games into Jason Kidd's tenure, where Tim Hardaway shot the ball so badly for a huge part of 2022 into 2020. It was just 2021 into 2022. Jason Kidd's first year. Like, he was unmanageable. I'm going to write, if Hardaway gets traded, I'm going to write an appreciation post, because I really like Hardaway was the tax for getting Porzingis. People forget this. And the fact that Luka helped turn him into a useful player, and he's going to go on to make a ton of money for his whole career. But at the same time, I'm going to be happy to be done with the Hardaway experience. It's a frustrating thing. What else? Is there anything else we want to touch on? Because I got one question I want to answer in the chat that I thought was interesting.
No, go ahead, because we literally have gone through the rundown.
Good. All right, and we're almost an hour in. Daniel M says, Kirk, what do you think about this trade? Grant and Thibault for THJ, Maxey Green, and a 2025 first top 10 protected. I want to start at the end first. I don't think the Mavericks can offer any protections with future picks, because they owe a 2027 and a 2029, because it cannot be top 10. Like, they would have to give an unprotected pick with anything that they do. Anything. So I've seen this out there a lot. Pretty sure that I mentioned this a little bit earlier. The Blazers aren't interested in anything the Mavericks have right now. So do I like it? Don't hate it. I just don't think it's real. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. I mean, you talk to people that would know a little bit more.
It's like those guys are very good. The Mavericks players aren't very good, and the Blazers are already not very good. They have a bunch of undersized shooting guards as is.
Yeah, like, I'm trying to think like what do they want with Maxey? Right. Not to disparage Maxey. I'm just trying to think of a player like Maxey. What does he help a rebuilding team right now? And then Josh Green, they've already got how many young players that are trying to figure it out? What's one more to the pile? And where does he fit into their rotation? What does he give them more that Thibault doesn't give them? And then not to be down on Josh Green.
Now that we know that Lively is actually a good basketball player, I'm very interested in the concept of Thibault. Thibault is garbage without a really good rim runner in front of him. I'm not rim runner, rim protector in front of him. Thibault is such a fake all NBA defensive player, because he played in front of Embiid, who gets to kind of play with impunity. And he would go, his big 6'7" ass would go get 2 rebounds a game while getting 2 steals a game. Like, he's a fake defender. But I think the Mavericks run such a physical defense that he might thrive in a Dallas uniform.
And having rim protectors behind him. So, yeah,
right.
Because last summer we didn't know that they were going to have that rim protection when we thought that there was when they gave him that offer sheet. And that's why we're like, I don't know, because is Lively, we're back then, we're like, is Lively going to be ready? And then after Lively, it's Dwight Powell and Maxey, and we're not sure what's going on there. So, but now that you have Gafford and you have an established Lively, probably makes a little bit more sense. And then, Grant is like, they just need more shooting, and they need more guys that are just capable threats with the ball. And that makes sense. I mean, it makes a lot of sense for the Mavericks. I don't see I mean, the pick might be okay, but like you said, now that the team, this isn't last year where there was so much uncertainty about the future of the team. They've done so much in 12 months to change the projection of where we think the team's going to be. Like last summer, sure, I could see teams lining up around the block to get as many of the Mavericks first round picks as possible because, they just finished 11th in the West and we had no idea where the team was going to go. Now they made the finals. Like next year's pick, like you said, is probably going to be in the low 20s. How valuable is that? Like, what does Josh Green add to what Portland's trying to rebuild?
Right.
It's not the cleanest fit there.
Yep. I don't know, but it
would be a great deal for the Mavericks.
I am only in the mood to say that I don't want one player. I don't want Andrew Wiggins. That's all.
You know what's happening now.
They're going to trade for Andrew Wiggins. Oh, yeah.
You just signed.
Oh, SJ, our occasional colleague SJ is writing a piece on this because she really wants him, and I'm just like, I can't. I don't want to argue with people, but I just can't attest. He was one of the worst. He was probably the worst high volume minutes player in the league last year. He was awful. And like, I just don't know how to explain that to people.
He was very bad.
He doesn't like basketball. It's like, do you want Ben Simmons West Coast? Like, because that's what it's. He's not that kind of like inept, but it's just like, I don't think he really cares about basketball. But that's the one. Everybody else you can kind of talk me into. Jeremy Grant can't play a lick of defense, but is that because he hasn't played a lick of defense or he can't play a lick of defense? That's a different situation. So,
right. Okay.
Oh, I'm kind of here. This is an interesting question. 77 Billiard says, what do you feel about the found respect for the Mavericks by the national media after the finals run? I kind of saw a mixed bag. I mean, there was like you saw like football players trashing Luka Doncic, and it's just like, okay, guys, settle down. How the Mavericks get talked about next season is always interesting to me. But again, guys, one of the things Josh and I always tell you is you should seek out voices who know what they're talking about. That may not be us. That's fine. There's lots of Mavs voices that watch the team 82 times a year. What I will tell you is that Skip Bayless doesn't watch the Mavericks, that Zach Lowe, to a degree, doesn't have time to watch the Mavericks. So you find information where you can get it and lean into that. So we'll be back. If something weird happens tomorrow night, maybe we'll hop on. But other than that, we'll probably circle back next week.
Because the second round, the draft is 2 days, so the second round.
And I gotta go. I gotta drive to St. Louis, and I have to be there for a week. I'll take all my stuff with me, but it's I'm not in a. I'm just not in a content making mood. So. Yeah,
we'll see. Well, look, when Bronny gets drafted, we'll have to hit the ground running. I'm sticking to it. I'm sticking to it till it ends.
I just like the Dalton Trigg you is so magical. He should be you should send him a care basket. I've stolen your bit.
I see the signs. I don't know what else I can say. I see the signs.
Well, Scoop B, Brandon Scoop B Robinson says, in addition to the Rockets, Dallas and Chicago also have some level of interest in Kevin Durant. Yeah, I bet we have interest in Kevin fucking Durant. Of course we have interest in Kevin Durant. Don't think we can afford Kevin Durant. What? God.
Hey, who knows, man? Who knows? But this is what happens when you make the finals, right?
That is correct.
This is what happens when you make the finals. Like this will be a great summer to test the who really does want to play with Luka Doncic kind of theory, because that's been a talking point. Is like Luka should be attracting, people should be wanting to play with him because he's such a great passer and great facilitator, and seemingly everyone that plays with him has a career offensive season, and it just never happened. But that's less to do, I thought, with Luka and more the team just wasn't good enough. They had the one conference finals run, and then they immediately finished 11th the next season. And it's not going to be an indictment if they don't make a good move because, their hands might be tied. But I will be very interested to see how the rumors continue to pick up because, like I said, this is what happens when you make the finals. Other players are going to start to notice you a lot more than they used to.
Love it, man. I love it. Salam says, I have interest in Sydney Sweeney, news at 11. That's a good comment. We're going to end on that comment. Guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate your support and time. Please consider leaving comments on this video if you're watching it. Those of you who've hung out for the live chat, you're the best. Everybody be good. We will be back at some point, and we'll be sure to try to broadcast that as best as possible. If you want to know when we're going live, you need to do something within your YouTube thing. There's an ability to get notified for whenever we post new videos. All right, everyone have a great night. We will talk soon, and go Mavs.